Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, the familiar smell of engine oil and metal shavings filling his small workshop on Kepler Station. The space station orbited a distant star, serving as a trading post for dozens of alien species. Most people called it the edge of nowhere, but Marcus called it home. He had been fixing a broken gravity generator when the emergency sirens started wailing. Through the thick windows of his workshop, he could see ships scrambling in the docking bay. Something was happening, but emergency calls were common on a frontier station like this. Marcus returned to his work, carefully adjusting the quantum coils inside the generator. His hands moved with practiced skill, each movement precise and confident. He had learned to fix almost anything during his 15 years on the station. Alien technology, human machinery, hybrid systems that nobody else understood. If it was broken, Marcus could usually make it work again. The sirens stopped suddenly. An eerie quiet fell over the station, broken only by the distant hum of life support systems. Marcus paused in his work, listening. In all his years here, he had never heard the station go so completely silent. A massive crash shook the entire workshop. Tools fell from shelves, and the gravity generator he was working on slid across the floor. Marcus steadied himself against his workbench, heart racing. That sound came from the main docking bay, just 2 levels down from his workshop. Emergency lights began flashing red throughout the station. The intercom crackled to life with Station Commander Valdris speaking in her usual calm tone. Though Marcus could hear tension underneath. All personnel, we have an unscheduled arrival in Bay 7. Medical teams to Bay 7 immediately. All other personnel maintain safe distance until further notice. Marcus looked toward his workshop door. Bay 7 was the largest docking area on the station, designed for massive cargo ships and emergency situations. Whatever had just arrived was big enough to shake the entire station when it landed. He tried to return to his work, but concentration proved impossible. The generator could wait. His curiosity had always been stronger than his common sense. A trait that had gotten him into trouble more times than he could count. Marcus made his way through the station's corridors toward Bay 7. Other residents gathered in small groups, speaking in hushed voices. He recognized merchants, technicians, and station security personnel. But everyone seemed confused about what was happening. The closer he got to Bay 7, the stranger things became. Security personnel were setting up barriers, but they looked nervous. Station security usually dealt with smugglers and the occasional drunk trader. Whatever was in Bay 7 was beyond their normal experience. Marcus reached the observation deck overlooking the main docking bay. What he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. A creature the size of a small building lay in the center of the bay. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered between deep purple and midnight black. Massive wings were folded against its sides, each wing larger than Marcus's entire workshop. 4 powerful legs ended in claws that had scored deep grooves in the metal floor when it landed. It was a dragon, an actual, living dragon, from the old stories and legends. Marcus had heard rumors that such creatures existed somewhere in the galaxy, but seeing one in person was overwhelming. The dragon's head was raised, and Marcus could see its eyes, large, intelligent, and filled with desperate sadness. The creature was making low, mournful sounds that seemed to vibrate through the station's hull. Every few seconds, it would look down at something small, lying beneath its massive head. Marcus pressed closer to the observation window, trying to see what the dragon was protecting. Between the creature's front legs lay a much smaller form. Another dragon, but this one was barely larger than a horse. The young dragon was completely still, its smaller scales a lighter shade of purple than its mother's. The mother dragon looked up suddenly, her gaze sweeping across the observation deck. When her eyes met Marcus's through the window, he felt a jolt of recognition. Those eyes held intelligence, emotion, and a desperate plea for help that needed no translation. Medical teams had arrived in the bay, but they kept their distance. Marcus could see Dr. Yuki and her staff setting up their equipment, but they were clearly unsure how to approach a creature of this size. Their medical knowledge covered dozens of alien species, but nothing like this. The mother dragon made a sound that was almost like a sob. She gently nudged her young with her massive head, but the smaller dragon remained motionless. Marcus realized with growing horror that the young dragon might already be dead. Station Commander Valdris arrived in the bay with a full security detail. She approached carefully, her hands visible and empty. The dragon's attention focused on her immediately. "We want to help," Valdris called out, her voice echoing in the vast space. "Can you understand us?" The dragon tilted her head, considering. Then she made a series of sounds that were clearly attempts at communication. Though Marcus couldn't understand the meaning, Dr. Yuki stepped forward with her medical scanner, moving slowly and carefully. The dragon allowed her to approach within a few meters, before letting out a warning growl that made everyone freeze. "The young one is alive," Dr. Yuki called out, reading her scanner. "But barely. I'm detecting massive organ failure and some kind of toxin in its system. I don't know enough about this species to help." The mother dragon's eyes filled with what could only be tears. Large, crystalline drops rolled down her scaled cheeks and splattered on the metal floor. The sight of such a powerful creature weeping broke Marcus's heart. He found himself moving without conscious thought, leaving the observation deck and heading for the bay entrance. Security tried to stop him, but Marcus pushed past them. "Sir, you can't go in there," one of the guards said, grabbing his arm. "She came here for help," Marcus said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "Look at her. She's not here to hurt anyone. She's a mother whose child is dying." Commander Valdris heard him and turned around. "Mr. Chen, this is not a repair job. That creature could kill half the station if it decided to." "She won't," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure why he was so confident. "Look at how she's protecting her young. Look at her eyes. She understands more than we think." The mother dragon had been listening to their conversation. Suddenly, she lifted her great head and looked directly at Marcus. Her eyes locked onto his, and he felt that same jolt of recognition as before. The dragon made a sound that was softer than her previous attempts at communication. It sounded almost like a question. Then she carefully picked up her young in her jaws and began moving toward the bay entrance where Marcus stood. Security personnel raised their weapons, but Commander Valdris held up a hand to stop them. The dragon moved with incredible care, each step calculated to avoid damaging the station. When she reached the entrance, she gently set her young down just a few meters from Marcus. The mother dragon looked at him again, and this time Marcus was certain she was asking for help. Not just any help, but his help specifically. Somehow, this massive creature had traveled across space to find him. "How did you know to come here?" Marcus asked quietly, knowing she couldn't understand his words but hoping she might understand his tone. The dragon made another soft sound and gently pushed her young closer to Marcus with her snout. The smaller dragon was breathing, but each breath was labored and painful to hear. Marcus knelt down beside the young dragon, his hands hovering over its scales. The creature was beautiful. Even in its weakened state, its scales were warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with a faint inner light that was growing dimmer by the moment. "I don't know anything about dragon medicine," Marcus said, looking up at the mother. "I fix machines, not living beings." But even as he said it, Marcus found himself examining the young dragon more carefully. There were strange markings on its scales, patterns that looked almost like circuit designs. Around its neck was something that definitely wasn't natural. A collar made of some kind of advanced metal that pulsed with its own light. The collar was clearly alien technology, far more advanced than anything Marcus had seen before. As he looked closer, he could see that parts of it seemed to be malfunctioning. Sparks occasionally flickered across its surface, and some sections were completely dark. "Dr. Yuki," Marcus called out. "Your scanner. Is the toxin concentrated around the neck area?" And the doctor checked her readings. "Yes. Actually, the highest concentrations are definitely in that region." "How did you know?" Marcus pointed to the collar. "Because this isn't a natural part of the dragon. Someone put this on the young one, and it's malfunctioning. The toxin isn't a poison from outside. It's being generated by this device." The mother dragon heard his words and made an urgent sound. She extended one of her claws very carefully and pointed at the collar, then made a gesture that clearly meant, Remove it. She understands, Commander Valdris said in amazement. She knows what you're saying. Marcus studied the collar more closely. It was beautiful in its complexity, but he could see where the malfunction had started. Some kind of power coupling had failed, causing the device to produce harmful energy instead of whatever it was supposed to do. This is going to require precision work, Marcus said, standing up. I need my tools, and I need everyone to stay very still while I work. If this device has a self-destruct mechanism, or if I trigger the wrong circuit, it could kill the young one instantly. The mother dragon seemed to understand the danger. She positioned herself protectively around Marcus and her young, creating a barrier between them and the rest of the bay. Her message was clear. She trusted him completely, but she wouldn't let anyone else interfere. Marcus ran back to his workshop, his mind racing through possibilities. He had worked on alien technology before, but nothing as advanced as what he had seen on the collar. Still, the basic principles of energy, flow, and circuit design were universal. If he could identify the malfunction, maybe he could fix it. When he returned with his tools, the mother dragon watched every movement carefully. Marcus could feel the weight of her attention as he knelt beside her young again. I'm going to help, he said quietly, looking into her eyes. I promise you. I'm going to try everything I can. The dragon made a sound that was almost like a purr, low and trusting. She gently touched Marcus's shoulder with the tip of one claw, the gesture surprisingly gentle for such a massive creature. Marcus opened his tool case and selected his finest precision instruments. The collar was a masterpiece of engineering, but the malfunction was spreading. He could see more sections going dark as the harmful energy built up. Time was running out. Whatever was wrong with the device, it was getting worse by the minute. The young dragon's breathing was becoming more labored, and the light in its scales was fading. Marcus took a deep breath and reached for the collar, praying that 15 years of fixing the impossible had prepared him for this moment. The mother dragon's eyes never left his hands, her trust absolute and terrifying. The fate of her child now rested in the hands of a human handyman who had never seen a dragon before today, but who couldn't bear to watch a mother lose her young. Marcus's fingers trembled slightly as he examined the collar more closely. The metal was unlike anything in his experience. It felt warm and almost alive under his touch. Intricate patterns covered its surface, some glowing softly while others flickered and sparked with dangerous energy. The mother dragon remained perfectly still, but Marcus could feel her tension. Her breathing created a rhythm that filled the entire bay, and her eyes tracked every movement of his hands. One wrong move could trigger her protective instincts. But Marcus sensed she understood the delicate nature of the work. Dr. Yuki approached carefully with her medical scanner. The toxin levels are increasing, she reported quietly. Whatever that device is doing, it's accelerating. Marcus nodded, not taking his eyes off the collar. He activated his portable work light and adjusted his magnifying lens to get a better view of the internal mechanisms. Through transparent sections of the collar, he could see a complex network of what looked like living circuits, pathways that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. This isn't just technology, he murmured to himself. It's biotechnology. The collar is interfacing directly with the dragon's nervous system. He had encountered biotech before, usually in medical devices created by the Zephyrians, but nothing this sophisticated. The collar seemed to be reading and interpreting the young dragon's biological functions, then responding with its own energy patterns. Marcus carefully probed one of the darkened sections with a fiber optic cable from his toolkit. The internal structure revealed itself on his diagnostic screen, a three-dimensional maze of organic circuits that had been growing and adapting to the young dragon's physiology. Incredible, he whispered. This device was learning. It was becoming part of the dragon's biology, probably enhancing its natural abilities. But something went wrong with the adaptation process. The mother dragon heard his tone of understanding and made a soft questioning sound. Marcus looked up at her, seeing hope flickering in her intelligent eyes. I think I know what happened, Marcus said, speaking to her as if she could understand every word. The collar was designed to grow with your child, to become part of them. But somewhere in the process, the biocircuits started producing the wrong kind of energy. Instead of enhancing your child's natural functions, it's poisoning them. The dragon tilted her massive head, clearly following his explanation. Her response was a series of melodic sounds that almost sounded like language. Marcus found himself wishing desperately that he could understand her words. Commander Valdris approached cautiously. "Mr. Chen, how long do you estimate before the situation becomes critical?" Marcus consulted his diagnostic readings. The harmful energy was building exponentially, and the young dragon's vital signs were weakening. "Maybe an hour. Perhaps less. The biocircuits are cascading into total system failure." The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a physical force. This wasn't just about fixing a machine anymore. It was about saving a life, about proving that a human handyman could succeed where advanced alien medicine had failed. Marcus began tracing the circuit pathways with meticulous care. The collar's design was beautiful in its complexity, but the malfunction had created a feedback loop that was spreading throughout the system. He needed to break that loop without damaging the healthy circuits or triggering a catastrophic overload. "I need complete silence," Marcus announced to the bay. "This is like performing surgery on a quantum computer while it's running. Any distraction could be fatal." The entire bay fell quiet, except for the soft humming of station systems and the labored breathing of the young dragon. Marcus felt the weight of dozens of eyes watching him work, but he forced himself to focus only on the task at hand. He selected his thinnest microprobe and began following the corrupted circuit pathway. The biotechnology responded to his touch, sections lighting up as his probe made contact. It was unlike anything he had ever worked with before, but the fundamental principles were recognizable. Energy was flowing where it shouldn't, creating a toxic buildup that was slowly killing the young dragon. Marcus needed to redirect that energy back into the proper channels. But the original pathways had been damaged by the cascade failure. "I'm going to have to bypass the damaged section," Marcus muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Create a new pathway for the energy to follow." The mother dragon heard him and made a concerned sound. Marcus looked up to see her watching intently as he prepared to make the critical modification. "I know," Marcus said softly. "This is dangerous. If I make a mistake, I could make things worse. But if I don't try, your child will die anyway." The dragon considered this for a moment, then lowered her great head until she was eye level with Marcus. Very gently, she touched her forehead to his, a gesture that conveyed trust and gratitude beyond any words. Marcus felt something extraordinary in that moment of contact, a brief sensation of shared understanding, as if he could sense the dragon's emotions directly. The overwhelming love she felt for her young, the desperation and hope warring in her heart, the absolute faith she was placing in his abilities. When she pulled away, Marcus's hands were steady. He selected a biocompatible conductor from his toolkit, a thin wire designed for interfacing with living systems. Working with infinite care, he began creating a new pathway around the damaged circuits. The collar responded immediately. Healthy sections began glowing brighter as energy was redirected away from the cascade failure. But the process was delicate. Too much energy too quickly could overwhelm the young dragon's system. "It's working," Dr. Yuki reported quietly, monitoring her scanner. "Toxin levels are beginning to decrease." Marcus allowed himself a moment of hope, but he wasn't finished yet. The bypass was only a temporary solution. He needed to repair or remove the damaged sections entirely, or the cascade failure would eventually find another pathway. As he worked deeper into the collar's systems, Marcus began to understand its true purpose. The device wasn't just an enhancement. It was a sophisticated life support system designed to help young dragons survive in environments hostile to their species. The patterns in the biocircuits matched star charts he recognized. This young dragon hadn't been born in space. It had come from a world with different atmospheric conditions, different gravity, different radiation levels. The collar was keeping it alive away from its home planet. "That's why you came to me," Marcus said, looking up at the mother dragon. "You couldn't just remove the collar. Without it, your child would die anyway. You needed someone who could fix it." The dragon made a sound that was unmistakably agreement. Her eyes showed a mixture of sadness and determination that spoke of a terrible choice. Watch her child die slowly from the malfunctioning device, or risk everything on finding someone who could repair it. Marcus returned to his work with renewed purpose. This wasn't just about saving one young dragon. It was about reuniting a family that had been torn apart by circumstances beyond their control. The damaged biocircuits proved more complex than any technology Marcus had encountered, but his years of experience with diverse alien systems served him well. Each species had its own approach to engineering, but the underlying principles of energy, matter, and information remained constant. He began replacing the corrupted circuits one by one, using techniques he had learned from a dozen different alien cultures: Zephyrian biointegration, crystalline quantum state manipulation, human intuitive problem solving. Marcus combined them all into an approach that was uniquely his own. The young dragon's condition began to improve noticeably. Its breathing became less labored, and the light in its scales grew brighter. The mother dragon watched with growing excitement, making soft, encouraging sounds to her child. But as Marcus worked deeper into the system, he discovered something that made his heart sink. The original damage hadn't been caused by a simple malfunction. It had been deliberate sabotage. Someone had intentionally corrupted the biocircuits, turning a life-saving device into a slow-acting poison. "Commander," Marcus called out quietly, not wanting to alarm the mother dragon. "I need to speak with you." Valdris approached carefully. Marcus showed her his diagnostic readings, pointing to the clear evidence of deliberate tampering. "Someone did this on purpose," he whispered. The collar was working perfectly. Then someone introduced a virus into the biocircuits. This young dragon was murdered. Or, someone tried to murder it. The implications were staggering. Who would want to kill a dragon child? And why use such a sophisticated method? The mother dragon had been listening carefully to their hushed conversation. When she heard the word murder, her expression changed completely. Rage flickered in her eyes, carefully controlled, but unmistakable. She made a series of sounds that were clearly words in her own language, her tone conveying anger and pain. Marcus didn't need a translation to understand. She had known this was deliberate. She had known someone had tried to kill her child. "That's another reason you came here," Marcus realized. "You didn't just need the collar repaired. You needed proof of what happened." The dragon nodded slowly, confirming his guess. Her expression held a promise of justice that made Marcus glad he wasn't whoever had committed this crime. Marcus returned to his work with grim determination. Not only did he need to save the young dragon's life, he needed to preserve evidence of the sabotage. Someone would pay for this attempted murder. But first he had to ensure there would be a survivor to seek justice. The final phase of the repair required the most delicate touch. Marcus had to remove the viral corruption without damaging the evidence it represented. Using techniques borrowed from data recovery specialists, he began isolating and quarantining the malicious code. As the last corrupted circuit was replaced, the collar suddenly blazed with brilliant light. The young dragon's eyes opened for the first time since Marcus had begun working, bright and alert and filled with the curiosity of youth. The mother dragon's cry of joy shook the entire station. She nuzzled her young gently, tears of relief streaming down her massive face. The young dragon responded with soft chirping sounds, its voice weak but growing stronger by the moment. Marcus sat back on his heels, exhausted but triumphant. He had done it. The impossible repair was complete, but as he watched the reunion between mother and child, he knew this was only the beginning of their story. The young dragon's recovery was remarkable to witness. Within hours of Marcus completing the repair, the small creature was standing on unsteady legs, supported by its mother's gentle encouragement. The light in its scales had returned to full brilliance, creating a soft purple glow that filled the docking bay with an almost magical radiance. Marcus had retreated to his workshop to analyze the data he had recovered from the corrupted biocircuits. What he found made him call Commander Valdris immediately. "The sabotage wasn't random," Marcus explained, displaying his findings on the workshop's main screen. The virus was specifically designed to target this particular dragon's genetic signature. Someone knew exactly who they were trying to kill. Valdris studied the data with growing alarm. This level of sophistication suggests government involvement. Only a few species have the technology to create something this precise. "There's more," Marcus said, pulling up additional files. The virus contains origin markers. It was created by the hegemony. The name sent a chill through the room. The hegemony was a coalition of species that believed in strict genetic purity and the superiority of certain bloodlines. They had been responsible for several attempted genocides over the past century, always claiming they were protecting the galaxy from genetic contamination. But why target a dragon child? Valdris wondered aloud. Marcus had been thinking about this question for hours. Dragons are one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Their genetic code contains information about the early evolution of intelligent life. If the hegemony could eliminate certain dragon bloodlines, they could destroy evidence that contradicts their theories about genetic superiority. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an attempt to murder one young dragon. It was part of a larger plan to erase historical evidence that threatened the hegemony's ideology. A soft sound from the docking bay interrupted their discussion. The mother dragon was calling for Marcus, her voice carrying notes of urgency and invitation. When Marcus returned to the bay, he found both dragons waiting for him. The young one was now fully alert and mobile, though still staying close to its mother's protective presence. But what surprised Marcus was that they weren't alone. 3 more dragons had arrived while he was in his workshop. These were even larger than the mother, their scales bearing the deep colors and intricate patterns that Marcus was beginning to recognize as signs of age and wisdom. Their presence filled the massive docking bay, making even that enormous space feel crowded. The eldest dragon, its scales a deep gold shot through with silver, stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the bay with harmonics that seemed to bypass Marcus's ears entirely, speaking directly to his mind. Human Marcus Chen. The dragon's voice filled his consciousness with perfect clarity. I am Elder Synthesis, speaker for the Conclave of Flames. We have come to witness what you have accomplished. Marcus staggered, overwhelmed by the direct mental communication. You can speak telepathically? When necessary, Elder Synthesis replied. Our young ones must learn your spoken languages as part of their education. But those of us who are old enough remember the ancient ways of communication. The mother dragon approached and gently nudged Marcus with her snout. When she spoke, her voice also appeared in his mind, though softer and more hesitant than the elders. I am Shield of the Morning Star. My daughter is called by distant suns. We owe you a debt that cannot be measured. Marcus looked at the young dragon, called by distant suns, who was watching him with bright, curious eyes. I just did what anyone would do. I couldn't watch a child suffer. Elder Synthesis made a sound that might have been laughter. You say this as if it were simple. Human. But you accomplished what our greatest healers could not. You repaired technology that our most skilled engineers had declared impossible to fix. And you did it without payment, without guarantee of safety, purely because you could not bear to see suffering. Another dragon, this one with scales that shifted between deep blue and violet, stepped forward. I am Current of the Deep Void. I have studied your species for many cycles, Marcus Chen. What you did today exemplifies something we have observed about humans that makes you unique among the intelligent species. Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment. I'm just a handyman. I fix things that are broken. Yes, Current of the Deep Void, agreed. You fix things. But more than that, you cannot see something broken without wanting to repair it. This drives you to attempt the impossible, to find solutions where others see only insurmountable problems. Elder Synthesis approached Marcus directly, lowering its massive head until they were eye to eye. The technology you repaired today was created by our greatest minds over 1,000 years ago. When it began to fail, we exhausted every resource trying to save young. Called by distant suns, our scientists declared the biocircuits beyond salvation. Then Shield of the Morning Star did something unprecedented. Current of the Deep Void continued. She searched the galaxy for someone who might succeed where we had failed. She studied the repair techniques of 100 species, and everywhere she searched, she found the same answer. Find a human, Elder Synthesis finished. Find someone who approaches problems not with predetermined solutions, but with creativity and stubborn refusal to accept failure. Shield of the Morning Star moved closer to Marcus, her mental voice warm with gratitude. "I traveled for months to reach this station. I had no guarantee you would help, no certainty you could succeed. But I had learned that humans possess something rare, the ability to see possibilities where others see only obstacles." Marcus was beginning to understand the magnitude of what had happened. This wasn't just about saving your daughter. This was about proving something. The hegemony believes that genetic purity creates superiority, Elder Synthesis explained. They claim that mixing species, sharing knowledge, and cooperation weaken the galaxy. They see your species as particularly dangerous because you form alliances so easily. Called by Distant Sons spoke for the first time, her young voice clear and strong in Marcus's mind. "They tried to kill me because my bloodline carries memories of the old times, when all species worked together. My genetic code contains proof that the galaxy was stronger when we shared our knowledge freely." The pattern was becoming clear. The hegemony hadn't just tried to murder a child. They were systematically eliminating evidence of historical cooperation between species, but they made a critical error. Current of the Deep Void observed. They assumed that only our most advanced technology could repair what they had broken. They never considered that a human with hand tools and determination might succeed where our sophisticated systems failed. Elder Synthesis turned to address the station personnel who had gathered to watch this unprecedented meeting. "Let it be known throughout the galaxy. The dragons formally recognize humanity as our allies. The debt we owe Marcus Chen extends to all his species." Commander Valdris stepped forward. "Elder Synthesis, we are honored by this recognition. But what does this mean practically?" The eldest dragon's response sent ripples of excitement through the crowd. "It means that dragon space is now open to human exploration and trade. It means that our technology and knowledge will be shared freely with your kind. It means that any who threaten humanity will face the wrath of the Conclave of Flames." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the implications. "I just fixed a broken collar. I didn't expect to start an interspecies alliance." Shield of the Morning Star nuzzled him gently with her massive head. "You saved my daughter's life." In dragon culture, this creates a bond that extends through generations. Called by Distant Sons will grow up knowing that her life was preserved by human compassion and ingenuity. Called by Distant Sons bounded over to Marcus with the enthusiasm of healthy youth. "Will you teach me about fixing things? Mother says you can repair anything that's broken." Marcus laughed, some of his tension finally releasing. "I'll teach you everything I know, little one. Though I think you might end up teaching me just as much." Elder Synthesis began preparing for departure. "We must return to Dragon Space to share news of what has happened here. The Conclave will want to meet you formally, Marcus Chen. You will be welcomed as a friend and ally." "What about the hegemony?" Marcus asked. "They'll try again." Current of the Deep Void's expression turned grim. "The evidence you preserved will be shared with the Galactic Council. The hegemony's crimes will be exposed, and they will learn that attempts to harm our allies will not be tolerated." As the dragons prepared to leave, Called by Distant Sons approached Marcus one final time. "I have something for you," she said shyly, extending a small, perfect scale that glowed with soft inner light. "This will let you call for dragon aid anywhere in the galaxy," Shield of the Morning Star explained. "More importantly, it marks you as family. You saved my daughter, and now you are part of our clan." Marcus accepted the scale with reverence, feeling its warm pulse against his palm. "Thank you. All of you." Elder Synthesis had the final word. "Do not thank us, Marcus Chen. You have shown us something vital about the future of the galaxy. When species work together, when they share their unique gifts freely, there is no problem that cannot be solved." The dragons departed as they had arrived, with thunder and majesty. But the station they left behind was fundamentally changed. Word of what had happened spread quickly through the communication networks, reaching every corner of civilized space. Within days, Marcus found his small workshop flooded with requests from species throughout the galaxy. Broken alien artifacts that had been considered irreparable for centuries arrived daily, accompanied by hopes that human ingenuity could work another miracle. Marcus hired additional staff, humans, aliens, and eventually a few young dragons, who wanted to learn his techniques. His workshop became a center of interspecies cooperation, a place where the impossible happened regularly through the combination of different perspectives and approaches. The hegemony's conspiracy was exposed and dismantled, their leaders facing justice for attempted genocide. But more importantly, their ideology of genetic superiority was thoroughly discredited. The galaxy had seen proof that diversity and cooperation were sources of strength, not weakness. Called by distant sons, visited regularly as she grew, learning human repair techniques while teaching Marcus about dragon technology. Their friendship became a symbol of the new age of cooperation that Marcus had unknowingly helped to create. Years later, when historians wrote about the great alliance between dragons and humans, they would mark its beginning with a simple moment. A desperate mother bringing her sick child to a human handyman who couldn't bear to see suffering. Marcus never saw it as anything extraordinary. He had simply done what humans did best: looked at something broken and refused to accept that it couldn't be fixed. In doing so, he had proven something fundamental about his species that resonated throughout the galaxy. Humans didn't just repair machines, they repaired hope, bridged differences, and found solutions where others saw only problems. And sometimes, in the hands of a simple handyman with a good heart and skilled fingers, that was enough to change the universe.